Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Digital Agenda, where we explore the digital future of the Nordic grids. My name is Johanna Wendersten. I'm responsible for most things digital in the house here, and together with me, I have my great colleague.
Amalie Lønning, running the cybersecurity side around of the table, if I can say it in that manner.
Yes, and that hasn't changed, but the studio has changed. We have moved. Since last time, even though digitally we look quite similar, but if not, hopefully in not too long, we will also be available on Spotify, so then we will also be moving a bit there, so very excited about that. Mm-hmm. It's been a while, but we're very happy to be back. Today we're digging into something, bit of a favorite topic of mine actually. Very exciting, very complex, and often easier in the PowerPoints than in practice, namely the OT and IT convergence. How do we modernize the systems that run the grid, enable more grid capacity, and still protecting the operational continuity? That is a question I think a lot of people in the industry are trying to answer these days. I don't expect us to come up with a definite answer in the next 45 minutes, but we will unpack a bit on what's possible, what's challenging, and what is actually working already today. And we're joined here together by some experts. So very welcome, Erik from Svenska Kraftnät, working with Project Manager for Digital Substations, and Jesper, you are responsible for digital products in the operational center and trying to translate there the OT and IT. Welcome. Would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much. It's interesting to be here. Very nice opportunity. Thank you. I'm working with at Svenska Kraftnät in Sweden, and we are building a process bus-based substation now, a digital substation. I'm the project manager of the innovation part of that project. That's one, let's say, flavor of the OT, where we connect really the control system to the breakers and really the control system in the field. But Jesper is maybe representing also another type of OT where we have the control center, which is also OT. So first we have to maybe discuss, but what do we mean with IT and OT? And that is different organizations. But I work primarily with the control systems very close to the field. And
I think you did very good in the introduction, so thank you for that. But basically, building products that are capable of actually supporting our control center and actually doing what's necessary to support the electrification, to support the energy transition, right? That's the main task here. And we have done that, I mean, for the past 30 years maybe. But the challenge is basically to keep it running while we change it. And why we see two worlds coming together, starting the conversion of IT and OT, which I believe was the main topic for the podcast today, right?
But I thought that was quite interesting because originally I had that. Usually we have like a fun warm-up question in the beginning, but you how can I say, you put the nail on the head really well, Erik, here. And if I can use this as a soft warm-up, then from your perspective, where does IT stop and OT begin?
We've been debating that internally back and forth. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's not necessary to come to a conclusion, but there are some IT tools, for example, scheduling and economical tools and such. That's really IT, really important stuff, but it's IT. And then there are protection systems, tripping the breakers and disconnecting the power to entire communities and such. That is really OT. Somewhere in between, you have IT tools supporting OT environments and OT tools supporting IT environments with measurement data and such. We need to work together. That's the only conclusion I've come to. And the border, it's not that easy to identify, and it's not necessary to identify really the border. Both are important. There are clear IT and clear OT, and it's also interconnected.
Yes, but what do you think? Can you relate to what Erik is saying here?
Yeah, of course I can. I think there is not that far from Denmark to Sweden. I think
well, there's a bridge,
quite literally.
But basically, at a higher level, IT and OT convergence is about moving from two separate worlds to one integrated digital operational common platform. So that's basically what we're aiming at here. And as we all know, the energy sector is not just a technology trend, it's a fundamental to operate a more complex and greener energy system. So basically, this is becoming a necessity that we do prepare ourselves to be operating a more complex energy system than we've done in the past. So yeah, I can very much agree with Eric on some of the point he just made here.
From the beginning, or a few years ago, we did a assessment internally. How can we manage all the new investments that we need to do in Sweden? There aren't enough resources. There isn't enough time. We need to work faster and better quality verification in the project and such. And we came up with, we can use modern technology, modern digital technology in a better way. And it's not only a technology shift. Then when you buy more advanced switches or the latest IEDs with a lot of functionality in them and such, you get a lot of tools and you're more integrated to the IT department. So this whole IT, OT convergence we got that by deciding to use modern technology from technology shift. And in the beginning, when we met in the lab to try to make this process bus substation work on the bench in the lab, there was some collisions between control systems guys and network switch guys who were kind of fighting, because both of them thought that this is my home arena, I know control systems, and the other guy thought that I know network environments. And there was some clashes, and I think that was very, very good also that we really had this kind of clinch in the lab initially. Afterwards, we realized that there is something called OT and IT, and all industries are struggling with this. We have learned a lot, but it came to us. It came from the fact we realized that by using more digital tools and modern technology, latest releases and so on, we could be more productive, be more efficient. But that also led to some IT, OT challenges that we really did not see that clear before that.
And I think
maybe to elaborate a bit.
Yeah.
So in practice, I think the bridge between IT and OT. So in Energinet, traditionally, IT was very much focused on data, applications, and the systems to support the business, while OT has focused on control systems like SCADA and basically the physical infrastructure, right? So that's where, at least where we have in traditionally put the difference between those two. And when I said in the beginning that the two worlds are coming together, that's basically what I see happening, converging between these two different worlds, right?
Mm-hmm. But it's interesting in this one. I was thinking a little bit what you said, Eric, here as well, and then we had a little bit in the pre-prep with you, Jesper. You're a professional translator in some way, trying to kind of bridge that gap between IT and OT. Do you see, like, for example, here the tribal language, with some of the challenges to way that they understand each other, like the networking guys that you talked about, Eric, needed to understand engineering guys as well down on the floor. How do you see that has developed in recent years, for example?
We've learned a lot by working together, and we are learning the language of the other parties, and so on. I think for a long time the IT world has been recruiting from the IT world, and the control system world has been recruiting from other parts of the industry. So we have really built up a big culture change, or a culture difference between IT and OT. So now when we work together, we see this culture. Yeah, it's different languages are used, different ways of working. We don't have lunch at the same time. And I mean, it's a huge difference between IT and OT.
That's a really good observation, actually.
So we were a bit struck by this difference and the clashes we had in the project. But now we are really working on this topic of IT-OT convergence. We have reorganized. Of course, we're always reorganizing, but we have reorganized in a way to help IT and OT work together in a more efficient way. The IT department now has a whole department that is working with OT, and the control system or network grid department also has one unit that is communication and OT services that is very close to IT. So we have identified in the organization which which bodies in the organization that has the most to do with IT-OT convergence, and maybe other parts of the IT has nothing to do with this. So now we can work together even more efficiently. We have recruited a new manager from externally, just for specifically setting up this OT part in the IT department. So we are really working on this, but we were kind of caught by it, and now we're working on the topic.
But that sounds very reasonable, building a small OT hub in the IT environment and vice versa. Are you doing something similar as well, Jesper, or how are you approaching that sort of cultural divide between the two?
So basically, if I'm to look at it, so from the IT side, if we have a problem, we fix it fast, quick. In the OT world, we would do all we can to prevent any problems happening at any time. Basically. So not doing too many changes is vital for our OT system. In an IT world, you have a culture that's about changing, improving, agile development, and so on. And basically, these two worlds is so the culture is different. So we spend invested some time in actually starting to understand the two worlds and how are they. So the IT people had to understand OT and the other way around. To start on the culture and start on the differences, and then starting to understand what the challenges is basically that we introduce when we can make this conversion happening.
Yes, but you make it sound so easy. You just have IT and OT guys talk together. I can share a little bit of my experience. I've been in customer meetings sometimes where I'm wondering if I should put on my LinkedIn like part-time therapist, when it's like in your work descriptions, what do you do? Because it's really, sometimes depending on, of course, organization, and I think what you're saying, culture, how you work with it, it differs so much. So it's like, I thought what I thought could be interesting to hear here, like, what are like some concrete things you see succeed? Like I have been in a room where I've had two premium adults almost wanting to attack each other from each side of the screen, discussing if we're doing ring or star segmentations on our networks. So is there any advice or any kind of small things that can have a big impact, for example, to meet each other halfway?
But I think that in the first place, you need to understand that the main challenges is not technology. To me, or to Energinet, the experience we had is basically that the main challenges is basically about making everything work together. So first of all, security. When IT and OT converge, what is happening to the threat landscape that we see? So how do we understand that? So we have a common view of the threats that we see ahead of us, and basically we need to treat security as one integrated discipline instead of two, right? I mean, starting to tackle challenges together to understand the new world that we are in is basically so talking more about the challenges that we see than all in all the ways that we do not agree on about how to tackle the world, right? And so focusing on the problems, not on all the difficulties, I believe is a way forward.
So that's actually quite interesting here that you're pointing out security as a matter here, Jesper.
Yeah, I heard your title in the beginning, so I thought let's put it in the agenda, right? So But yeah, security is of course one important topic, especially in the days that we are in.
Okay, what about you? It doesn't need to be security, but I can see then obviously you unite, so to say, for a common enemy, if I can use that term. But what do you think, Eric?
What was really helpful for us was that we early on decided to build a process bus substation and really make it work in the field. Because if it would have been a theoretical study or some lab experiment, the IT and OT people would not really have worked together to solve their issues. But now, when we realized in the lab that we couldn't trip the breaker fast enough, or that we had common modes of failure that could stop the entire substation from one fault, it wasn't fun anymore. And we needed to really, the solution was not in the control system configuration, and the solution was also not only in the switches configuration and if we had a star structure or HSR structure or whatever, we had to work together because some of the faults that we were struggling with were control system faults that had to be solved really control system, but most of it was the integration between control system world, OT and IT. And by doing this for real and having real deadlines and really, the knife to your throat, that made everyone realize that they didn't understand everything themselves, and everyone became, I don't know if we were lucky, but in the project we understand that we need more than ourselves. We need each other somehow between IT and OT.
But did you bring, for example, both camps together quite early in the project in this regard, or was it more kind of as you realized certain challenges came ahead further down the line?
The project was started very much from the grid department side. It was OT, and then some network technicians were brought in just because there were some new fancy words that we didn't understand. So we had to get the IT guys over.
Yeah.
So that was stupid. If I would have done it again, I would have had IT integrated much more in the project much earlier, because we could have avoided a lot of conflicts. There we're also talking about documentation practices, for example. In the OT world, we always had binders with paper printouts of circuit diagrams sitting in the substation. There is nothing like that on the IT side. They have centralized backups, perhaps. Nothing is stored on site. If there's a problem with a remote connection, you fix the remote connection, and then you fix maybe something locally. So we would have thought much more about way of working and how that differs between IT and OT, not only try to build a OT solution using some IT equipment. There's a cultural differences, and way of working is different. So if we would have started from the beginning, we would have at least tried to bring IT in much earlier. Yeah.
Yes, but have you similar experiences from other projects as well, that it's very easy to sort of start from one hand, and then, like you say, you ask for support from the IT department or vice versa, but then realizing maybe afterwards that sitting around the same table and really facing the challenges together makes the collaboration more efficient and the end result better? Or what's the experience from your side?
Well, basically, we consider this convergence thing as basically a transformation that we need happening.
Yeah.
And to get back to why it's important, I think one of the reasons why this is happening and it's important is basically that the OT world can take much better decision if it's basically supported with the right tooling from the IT world, right? So to get much stronger decision and making us capable of actually gaining value from AI, basically we need to support the OT world with IT tooling. And of course, the reason why we need to do this is basically to understand what's happening in the system faster and earlier, to make us able to tackle or to respond faster to incidents or disruptions. Basically, we need more information to be able to do that. So that's what it's all about, to take the right decision. For instance, in a control center based on data, and the data supported with AI to take good decisions, right? And of course, in an energy system where you need greater flexibility, and you are more dependent on what's happening on the weather data, for instance, of course, you need to introduce more data into the decision making in a control room. And to me and to us, basically, much of this convergence is basically to make us being a bit better at actually taking the greatest decision to support the green transition. So that's one of the reasons to actually to do this transition. To be more practical or concrete could be, and ask a few in a second. And again, it is basically modernizing our IT world with a platform approach, where we know that we need to build more capabilities faster to support what I just meant earlier on. And to do that, we need to build the right foundation of security around the platform, at the same time introduce some of the more modern technology on the foundation level, right? So that's one of the projects that we have. And basically, to do that, we needed to understand the full potential and the full problem and challenges from both sides to make sure that we do the right design of this platform. So that's one example on where we made the two worlds come together.
Yeah.
And basically, when you're building connectors or platforms where you want to connect OT and IT with data, basically you need to make sure that you have all the guys from collecting the data on the station level to it all ending up in a database in IT. You need the whole value chain to come together and talk about how do we do that in the most efficient and secure way, of course. And that's another example on where we had to put people in the same room to make sure we understand from where data start to where data end. And that's some of the more concrete examples that I have here.
We've had some bad examples in Svenska Kraftnät where we have put different types of sensors out in the grid, producing some signal that we think is valuable for the dispatch center. But then in the end, we haven't been able to integrate this really in the operation of the grid because of some IT security issue, whatever it can be. It doesn't fit in the architecture, it doesn't fit in the data format, whatever it is. So we have a very good, often expensive system in the field that cannot really be used in the operation of the grid because there is some integration missing. So now we have taken a step back and started working more on the basic tools that we need and the basic structure of IT and OT systems. What can be connected where, what boundaries and what zones and conduits, as it's called, but what levels and what type of systems do we have? What can be connected where? Try to come up with standard file repositories, standard ways of authentication and such. And then we can enable a lot of things from the OT world over to IT. But just by installing a sensor in the grid and connecting it somewhere, that doesn't work. You have to have the whole architecture.
And I think you're also, to be honest, touching upon a point that at least I've noticed in conversations around as well, is that sometimes, especially when you're kind of rigging yourself to be future ready from a grid perspective, or you're thinking about, okay, how can we use all of these new technologies and innovations to kind of building our own resilience in the way we work, we tend to, how can I say it, overcomplicate things without having control over the basics first. At the end of the day, if you want to build platforms, this is at least how I reflect in my head. Johanna is a main on digital, so I feel like I'm going to exams on you now. But obviously, the golden rule of shit in, shit out data. Yeah? So if you really want to then utilize that power you have, and if you don't kind of even know what data you want out, how to structure it, and that, as you say, do we have the basics right? Do we have the processes right to even begin? I think at least that's where I've seen it sometimes goes wrong, that the basics and the foundation is not really set yet, and we haven't really kind of decided where you want to go.
Because it's a very complex system architecture. It's not done overnight to build that as well. That also needs to be said and respected, I think. But definitely, I think that is a very high level of recognition that it's challenging and difficult to make sure that the data ends up where it needs to be. But there's also a reason that it's a bit difficult, right?
Yeah. Yeah, of course, you have a security perspectives and these types of things around it. Yeah, you mentioned AI, for example, as well, Jesper. And that also creates a complete new threat picture that we're getting used to now, all of us. I went to an OT conference yesterday in Norway, and there was one of the really great speakers in there. You said, when we're protecting either our industry or our power grids, regardless, what is scary is that all our adversaries right now are utilizing artificial intelligence. And then the famous question came. Was like, okay, so how do we then defeat the bad guys? Yeah, and then you can imagine most of the guys and the gals in the room was electro engineers, and then he says, well, unfortunately, it's not something you want to say out, but it's really starting to adopting artificial intelligence, because you need to start fighting AI with AI. Which is a different. We can have that on the next cybersecurity episode. But I can imagine that will be very interesting, because I think it's either way. It's a threat you need to take in. That aside, though, just going back to where we were, I'm thinking right now there's probably quite a few TSOs, DSOs listening in across the Nordics. Last time we also have several in the Europes. Oh, that was great English. Also around in Europe, if they're thinking, okay, convergence is important, but we talked a little bit about the challenges with integrations and different things. Like, where do we start? If they haven't started yet, what would you tell them to your colleagues across the ponds or bridges or borders?
First, I will start with thinking about, is it really possible to operate systems really isolated and to always go on site to do all kinds of supervision and changes? And obviously in Sweden, it's not, because it's a too large country. It takes more than a day to travel to parts of the country. So we have to have remote access, and then you're already into all of this authentication and secure borders and things like that. So I would start with on that level, perhaps. Can we work without remote access? No, we cannot. And then from there, all the other things will unfold. You will have your IT/OT integration already. But the idea of having an air-gapped substation that has a key, and only the trusted guys has the key to go into the substation, that it doesn't work in practice. So we have to understand that we need remote access. We need to do updates. We need to listen to the vendors that we are using. When they come up with new updates, we have to somehow at least be able to implement them. We have to have a way of sending a file onto a substation, verify that you get the right file there, and integrate this into the IEDs. And this is already IT tools that are needed in the OT environment. So just by looking at what you have, and there is a lot of IT already in the substation, and you cannot operate the substations isolated anymore. It's not feasible.
Yep. But if I'm to add on that, Eric, I believe we need to start at why. So basically, why is this happening, and what does it mean for my business? And to be honest, it starts that the leadership actually accept that this is happening, whether we like it or not. So basically, starting by understanding what's happening and what does that mean to the business that I'm running. Because basically, to make this transition happening, basically the leadership needs to be able to set a clear direction. And basically, if you cannot do that if you do not understand what's going on and what that means to your business. So, and then the next, we need to move away from thinking about IT and OT as two separate systems, because basically that's not the world that we already are in. So this is not the future. This is basically now. So for me, it comes down to three priorities. You need to set up a clear architectural decision or direction, a strong focus on how to actually increase the speed of your business and at the same time increase the security level happening at once, and what's your strategy to do that? And last but not least, how are you going to organize cross-functional teams that bring IT and OT people come together? So that's three suggestions where you can start, but basically back to leadership, back to setting a clear direction for your organization.
Really nice and well summarized and shared. I think we've sort of mapped where we stand in the challenges, but I'm always a bit of an optimist, and I always like having visionary people like you guys also looking a bit into the future. I'm always curious to hear, given the experience you have, given where we're standing today, given the speed of development, if you look into 5-10 years ahead in the future, what do you think sort of the everyday life will look like at Energinet and Svenska kraftnät? What do you dream about if everything goes well, if we can, build that bridge, we can get the data where it needs to be? What are you dreaming about?
I hope we've stopped buying IEDs at that time and are still or virtualizing and using apps instead, because it's the most stupid thing we have in our substations are the IEDs and the RTUs. We need to virtualize things and I mean work in a more modern way with virtualizing everything that can be virtualized on servers, redundant servers with good redundant firewalls and such. But that will be in a few years. We will have less hardware boxes and more things integrated on a virtual platform, I think.
Yeah. So I think my answer will be a bit different, but to me, just making it possible to support the business in the transition that are already ongoing would be my dream. Basically, we are there is in Europe I mean, at least in Denmark, we have some difficulties on being fast enough. So basically, being able to just support that transition fast enough, secure enough for what's already going on is, I believe, my dream. And to do that, I think we discussed some of the things needed to do that. But basically, that would be my vision: just being able to support the transition that's going on.
That's amazing.
The transition also comes from more integration. We will no longer have islanded systems. Everything there's a kind of a pressure from, let's say, younger engineers or new people who are used to technology where you connect things together and you can access data. We will need to access more data. We will need to integrate main 1 and main 2 substation, or main 1 and main 2 protection systems in substations to compare them and such. So everything will be more integrated, and all of this will, as Jesper say, accommodate or enable the green transition and what's happening in society, because it's pushed from both sides. We are changing things in how the grid is working and how the substations are built that enables a lot of more megawatts to be connected, for example, because we have better control of the temperatures in substations. Can be easy or simple things like that. And also more and more industries are being connected, which puts a lot of force on the substation that needs to be supervised in a different way. It goes both ways, but
I think that was a really good and nice summary. And I think as sort of come up throughout the conversation, that it's really important to remember, yes, we're engineers, yes, we like the technology, but as you both said, the reason that we are talking about this, the reason that convergence exists is because we need to enable the green transition and making sure that the industries can be electrified and that we can reduce the CO2 footprint of Europe, which is always important to sort of keep in the back of mind, that it's not really about the technology, it's about why we are here and what is really driving the change and shift. So thank you so much for making sure that we sort of put that first as well, and not only dive into the system architecture of things.
It makes me excited for the future, though.
Me too.
So if I can put it that way, it's one thing having Eric really also setting the visionary, and then again, Jesper with the entire transition as well, how we get there and everything that needs to happen in between. And regardless if you are going in with Eric's perspective and working with Jesper's, and I can imagine they're sitting somewhere now who has 3, 5, 10 other ideas. I think this is usually a good time. We've always asked on the digital agenda, if you're listening in, but also, for example, from Eric and Jesper, what would you like us to discuss on the next episode of Digital Agenda?
What is an interesting question. What is the topic that is not really being
talked about enough?
Well, I think we should talk about international cooperation and international standardization.
Putting note on that.
Historically, Sweden and Denmark and Norway and many other countries have been kind of their own markets. So we have our own signal lists and our own names for everything. Control centers have different ways of working and things like that. Now we are integrated. We are already in this program. We are cross-border communication, trying to find mutual areas of interest, mutual solutions. And we as customers cannot buy a thing that isn't available on the markets. We have to somehow inform Siemens what we need, and they can maybe make a product and sell it back to us. So in the next program, maybe you can, on the next episode, you can talk about international collaboration and standardization in order to because we cannot work in islands anymore. It's one Europe. We are having a lot of interconnections, both electrically, but also exchanges between companies, and we have the same consultants and we have the same kind of market to hire from. So we should find mutual solutions.
All right. Well, noted standardization and international cooperation. Jesper, I feel like trying to be Santa Claus coming early. What do you want on your wish list for an episode of Digital Agenda?
Yeah, well, there's a long way to Christmas in my mind right now. So yeah, I imagine snow. At somewhere around Christmas. But to support Eric's idea, basically we all have more or less the need for the same capabilities.
Yeah,
we all need to increase the level of security, and we all need to increase the speed of actually delivering the right capabilities in the future. So, on the international scene in Europe, for instance, how do we make this happen faster? Because the future is not tomorrow, it's now. And put that scene on the international stage would be awesome. And then I'm listening in for sure. That's a promise.
Happy to hear. Yeah, that's very good input and good ideas. I got inspired. I got a few ideas already. So thank you very much for that. But we already have some ideas for next episode, right, Amalia?
Yeah, next episode is we are getting closer, not to that kind of standards, but in our world, it's going to be a little bit more cybersecurity theme next week, at least for you two sitting in the room. The Norwegians are still lagging behind, but there's a beast called NIS2 that has now been in place since the Danes has been at it since October. Sweden, you came in now a little bit late in January. Finns are close with the Danes, and Norwegian, we just started with NIS1. So plus minus a year. How much wiser have we gotten? We got a few experts who will join us on that journey. So looking forward. Not standardization yet, but again, security can be a way to do there. With that said, just want to say thank you for everybody who's listening in. Thank you so much, Eric and Jesper, for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and knowledge. I'm very sure that there will be quite a few individuals who will be inspired and get good ideas for how to work on the topics on IT and OT convergence themselves in their own, I wanted to say homes, but back in their own organizations.
Exactly, and maybe starting to align the lunch hours as well is a good sort of first step to starting to building that bridge.
Well, don't start with the hardest parts.
No, I guess that's right.
Brilliant.
Good. Yeah. So with that said, thank you so much for listening in today, and see you next time.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's cut.